Hey, I'm Andrew Connell. This video is an overview of one of the chapters in my course that's available for purchase on my site, Voitanos.io. This overview video is going to give you an idea of everything that the chapter covers. You can learn more by checking out the description in the notes below the video. If you got any questions about this chapter or about the course in general, just make sure you drop a comment below below the video, and I'll be sure to get back to you. So with that, let me get out of the way. Enjoy the overview to this chapter.
Welcome to my course on building extensions with the SharePoint Framework for use in extending and customizing your SharePoint deployments. I want to take a minute to first just welcome you to my course, explain what this course is, and then we'll dive into what you can find in this course. Now, my goal in this course is to teach you what you need to know to be productive at your job with the SharePoint Framework. In this first chapter, I'm going to introduce the course so that you know what to expect and how to get around. You might be wondering who I built this course for. The student that I have in mind when building this course are web developers. This includes developers with lots or a little bit of traditional SharePoint development experience. The types of developers who've built things like farm solutions, sandbox solutions, SharePoint hosted add-ins, provider hosted add-ins, or developers who've used tools like SharePoint Designer to write client-side solutions. I also think about web developers with experience building client-side solutions using JavaScript. You may not have experience developing for SharePoint in the past, but that's okay. The SharePoint framework involves creating client-side components for SharePoint using the technologies that you're familiar with, like JavaScript and CSS. It's going to help to know some stuff about SharePoint, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because let's start by first explaining what this chapter is all about. Now, in this chapter, I'm going to start by introducing you to this course and what you can expect from it. The chapters in this course are just some of the chapters from my exhaustive Mastering the SharePoint Framework course that contains everything I know about the SharePoint Framework. This course covers building extensions using the SharePoint Framework, and that includes things like application customizers, list view command sets, field customizers, and list form customizers. My Mastering the SharePoint Framework course contains a lot more content, over 40 hours of instruction. If you ever want to upgrade to one of the Mastering the SharePoint Framework bundles in the future, either the fundamentals or the ultimate bundles, just contact us. We'll credit you the price of this course that you're in right now towards your enrollment for the applicable course that matches up. Now, I want to explain how you can get the most out of this course and how to ask questions during the course. Before I wrap up this introductory lesson, let's talk about what you need to be successful in this course. Of course, there's nothing required. You can just sit back and watch these videos, but if you want to repeat any of the things that I show you in this course, you're going to need to have a few things on your side of the screen. You need a SharePoint environment in order to deploy and fully test the components that you're building. Now, I suggest you have a Microsoft 365 developer tenant and a local developer environment. Sure, SharePoint Framework is supported on some on-premises SharePoint deployments, but, well, I'm going to get to that a little bit later in the course. Now, this chapter and the next two chapters that you're currently watching are also part of my starter bundle, and they cover what the SharePoint Framework is and what environments the SharePoint Framework supports and what you need to develop it in a lot more detail, including how to set up your developer environment. Now, in addition to the SharePoint environment, while it's not required, it would help if you got some understanding of some core concepts in SharePoint. Things like what is a tenant, a site collection, a site, a document library. It's going to really help quite a bit if you know what these things are. Now, I'm not going to cover these in the course as they're well covered in the SharePoint documentation with simple Google searches. Now, like I said, you're also going to need a developer environment, and any relatively modern desktop or laptop that you've used to build web apps is going to work just fine. All you'll be doing is JavaScript-based development with a text editor and running some tools. You don't need too much hardware to be able to accomplish these tasks. And don't worry about setting it up right now. We've got a whole chapter dedicated to that topic that's later in a couple chapters. So we'll walk through that in just a bit. Now, last but not least, you should really have some sort of a web developer background. Ideally, you've got some experience with JavaScript, TypeScript, or building client-side web applications. If not, don't worry. I want this course to also speak to those traditional SharePoint developers who I know spent more time doing server-side development than client-side development. Okay, that's it. You don't need much to work with the SharePoint framework. This lesson served as an overview for this chapter, and I told you what you can expect from this chapter, and I explained who the target audience was for this course and shared some prerequisites. Okay, that wraps up my brief introduction to the course. In the next lesson, I want to introduce myself, as we'll be spending a lot of time together as you make your way through my course. But if you already know who I am, feel free to skip that lesson and jump straight to the following one. That ACEs are founded on. You should watch this primer lesson if you've never worked with adaptive cards before. But if you're already familiar with adaptive cards, feel free to skip to the third lesson where we dive right into ACEs. So I'll see you in the next or the next lesson.